Morning. Oh, I can't hear you. Thanks. All right, I've checked my settings. I can't.
Join audio by computer. Good morning, Jamie.
Good morning, Stephan. We did it.
Oh man, episode 28, and we're still having technical difficulties.
You know, it happens. I think no matter, I don't care how many you've done, people still run into them. They just edit them out over time. Anytime you're working remotely, if there's a reliance on technology, you are going to run into a tech problem at some point. I believe.
Well, we're not going to bother editing it out.
Nope, we're just going to leave it because it's real.
We're going to post it. We're going to post it.
I think the realness is important.
This is the Unconstrained Podcast.
All right. What do you have there this morning?
I am drinking bone broth with bladderwrack seaweed powder and Irish moss seaweed powder and a little bit of miso and a little bit of one other supplement. I can't think of it. It is my own version of mud, and
no judgment.
I can't say that anybody else would like this beverage, but I can tell you that that for anyone who has at least in my experience, when I have had stomach issues, ulcer type issues, that bone broth and deglycerized licorice, DGL, are a very quick cure, like in a couple of days.
Wow. Huh.
Take care of. Yeah. One of the things that the bladderwrack seaweed is supposedly, or according to research, I guess, ultimately, which is why I'm using it, is that bladderwrack coats the stomach, helps coat the stomach, and keeps the bacteria that cause ulcers from bonding to your stomach and intestinal wall.
Wow.
The Hylobacter, I think the Hylobacter pylori. Little bastards.
The gut health episode. This is I'm still
on
black
the gut
coffee.
Health episode.
I'm still on black coffee over here. And I will say though, you know, with every year that passes that I make it another revolution around the sun, I do notice how what I take in affects me differently than, you know, in our 20s and 30s and early 40s even. I'm in my latter 40s now. And I do notice, like, this year has been a significant shift in how my body responds. It's funny because I remember a big shift when I was like 42, feeling a very big shift in my body, a very apparent one, and how my body responded to my not so awesome diet, right? And my habits from my youth. And, you know, I don't know, historically, very active person. I was like, I can eat whatever. And it didn't used to affect me very much. Like, you know, I didn't put on a lot of weight. But like, as I've aged, 42 was the first significant one. 45 was another. And then 47 has been yet another, where like the in-between years, it feels like I'm accommodating and I'm understanding the shifts before the next big shift happens. So, but and this year I've had a much harder time, a much greater challenge in accommodating the shifts. The shifts are so significant that it really is highlighting some of my bad habits, if that makes sense. And, like in a
Ye-
way that I've never experienced before.
Yeah. I think for me, the major realizations and major shifts in my diet and understanding about my health were in my, let's say, my early 30s, when my
Yeah.
daughter was, let's say, somewhere around the eight, where my daughter was around 3 or 4 or 5 years old. So I was in my mid 30s, and I was running my high rise window cleaning company, and I thought I was eating a spiritually superior vegetarian diet. And for 2 seasons, I was, 2 winter seasons, I was continuously ill. Every couple weeks, I was dealing with some kind of flu, sinus issue, some kind of funk, malaise, you name it,
Yeah.
fever, and terrible congestion, usually, lots of inflammation. Yet I had to be outside hanging from a building, cleaning windows. And since, as we know, any of us who have been sole proprietors of if you don't work, you don't get paid.
That's right. You take the work when it's there.
so
Yep.
So I found, and so I'm burning a lot of calories, right? I'm burning tons of calories because I'm out, working 8 hours a day,
Very
doing
physical
blue
work.
collar,
Yeah.
blue collar labor, hanging. And there was no amount of food that I could eat that I felt gave me energy. So I just felt like I was eating more and more, getting more and more bloated, and not able to generate any energy. And probably the second, the maybe it was the, I don't remember what, we were at the beach. I was at the beach with my friend Dean, who is already in his late 50s, early 60s, and contending with some cancer issues. And it was about quite a few years after the first publication of the book, Eat Right for Your Type, about blood type eating, and how your immune system, depending on your blood type, responds to different foods and either accepts them or rejects them based on your immune system. And so Dean was also eating like a vegetarian, and he had a landscaping company, and he is just a skinny, super wiry guy, and has the has the labor force, like his own force, his own energy is like the Mongolian army. You put him out there on a landscaping job, and he's just working all day, taking care of stuff, never stops moving. And he said, I had cancer issues, and I realized I was blood type O, which is the oldest Aboriginal blood type. Probably 50 or 60% of the people in the world are still type O blood type. And that is the caveman blood type, essentially. It is the blood type that responds the best to a paleo style diet. Red meat is beneficial for type O's, lamb is beneficial, and not much processed food at all is beneficial for type O's. It's very hard for type O's to process processed food, to digest processed food. And what happens in our systems, if we're eating food that's not beneficial or not, let's say, recognized or approved by our blood type, then we get inflammation. Our body tries to remove it. And I heard that and I thought, I better check this out, because I've been sick. I've been in the summers, I'm swimming in the lake and I'm constantly cold. I have no energy. And so I think the last spring, I just went to, oh, it was that last spring, after being sick during the winter, I just went to Spain and I ate whatever was in front of me, which
Yeah.
included lamb, fresh vegetables. I was just traveling. And by the time I came back after 12 days, we were rock climbing and just eating our way through Spain. I was already 80% better. I mean, I was just, and that's when that summer is when I saw Dean on the beach and we talked about it. And I thought, oh, I'm going to try eating more red meat. I'm going to put red meat back into my diet because I just remember how much I loved it as a kid. Like I could pick the raw hamburger right off the grill and eat it, kind of thing, which doesn't excite a lot of people. But what happened that summer is my energy level went up. I wasn't cold swimming in the lake anymore. My metabolism sped up. My
Yeah.
digestion started working again properly, and I didn't have the inflammation anymore. And so that has guided me ever since. Now, do I eat purely for my blood type? No, but I have such an incredible sense now of what foods serve me and what foods don't serve me and what brings me energy and what's easy to digest. And just I know how the machine works.
Yeah.
I understand my machine better, and everyone is an individual. And one of the biggest differences in people's immune systems is regulated by their blood type. It's part of
Interesting.
evolution. So the um, O is the oldest Aboriginal caveman blood type. Type A blood type evolved. If you look at blood types and their progression, let's say 60,000. So, blood type O is 60,000 years old as far as they can track it. Blood type A evolved in Mesopotamia, the breadbasket. So it's when people started domesticating animals, chickens, growing grain, making bread. So that immune system can tolerate these more processed products where chicken is healthier for type A's than it is for type O's. Grains, type A's can tolerate grains a lot better than type O's. And then 5 or 6 thousand years later, there was type B, which is the nomadic blood type, which can be found all the way from Finland to Korea. So if you imagine all of the people migrating along the Silk Road, and they're taking preserved foods like cheeses, making yogurt from yak milk and things like that. And so those immune systems tolerate type B immune systems tolerate dairy way better than any of the other blood types. And then maybe only in the last 5,000 years, there's the blood type AB because those blood types mixed, and that's a very rare blood type and very particular.
But there's also like A positive, A negative, right? Like what?
Yes, and those are also factors that affect whether things are beneficial or whether you should avoid them. And what Dr. Diadamo, who is somebody here from the Northwest, used to be the dean of Gesundheit, used to be the dean of the naturopathic medical school here, John Bastyr University. What he did was he typed all of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of foods against blood type. So you can take the immune factors in type O blood, and you can take the smallest element of a food, the smallest protein or the smallest element of a grain or a meat, which is called a lectin, and you can put those lectins with the immune factors from the blood and see whether or not that blood type agglutinates or tries to surround and kill or remove that particular protein, or if the immune system says, "Meh, it's okay." And so that's what he did. And that's where his research basically came up with the blood type stuff. And over the
Interesting.
years,
Yeah.
it's been refined. And now there's a whole online library of typed, it's a type base of all the different foods and how they interact with your particular blood type.
Interesting. Do you find that things change over time for you,
Uh,
or just like what
no,
works then works now?
no. Well, what does change over time is how bad the bad stuff affects me.
Yeah,
The
and I think
stuff,
that's
but
like
this,
what I'm realizing. Yeah, is like, but it's yeah. I feel like I've never really figured out like what works, like what's really like good. It's not like I don't know what's not good for me. Like that's a pretty easy, obvious thing for most, in most sense. But what I don't have a handle on is like willpower. So if you say, hey, here's a pizza, I'm gonna eat that pizza. Like I don't really, I don't know.
well, what I found, I mean, in the beginning, I would joke, yeah, I've replaced wheat with meat, but I eat plenty of wheat now, but it's usually organic. And that's wheat is a whole nother story because wheat in the United States is treated with glyphosate. And if you're not using organic wheat, chances are you're getting a good dose of Roundup in your baked products. And Roundup is an endocrine disruptor. And I mean, and it's used in probably 98% of the grain growing industry, because that's the way we grow grain here in the US for the most part.
Yeah.
But that's another story. We can go into that. But the blood type stuff, what I discovered was that the moment I started switching, I realized there were things that I was eating all the time that I thought were healthy. Like I was eating sesame tahini, and the sesame oil was causing inflammation. All right. And so I was like eating grape, grape nuts with rice milk and sesame tahini and I mean, all kinds of things that you would think a granola head vegetarian style diet would be very healthy. But because the typo immune system is like, what is this? Right? No caveman ever made sesame tahini. Right? I mean, if we get to the base sense of what a caveman diet is, you're killing animals and you're pulling stuff out of the ground. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so vegetables, meat and vegetables, no processed grains, no, not even processed dairy products. Caveman didn't have time to milk a goat, right? Didn't even know that you could milk a goat. And there are a few exceptions to that. Like the Maasai culture is almost universally type O blood type, yet they tolerate dairy products because they have evolved over hundreds of generations of raising dairy cows and drinking milk and drinking cow blood, and there's a reason why they have such beautiful teeth and incredible skeletons and graceful. They're so beautiful, graceful humans. Their diet perfectly suits their immune system, and it's very simple, right? It's not an exotic diet. They're not adding things to it that are at least in the purest sense. I'm sure
Sure.
they're drinking Coke. I'm sure they're drinking Cokes and Pepsis and eating pizza when they're in town.
Yeah, I don't
um,
know, man.
I mean, there's tons of stories like this, especially in the Canadian Arctic and the American Ar- and the in the U.S. Arctic, the Canadian Arctic, native tribes up there that were used to eating seal and whale and very, very simple diets. now have incredible incidences of heart disease, and because they're eating just like us. Hudson's Bay store is up there selling them all the crap that we eat down here in the lower 48. And so they've gone from eating almost all animal-based diet and being very
All
healthy
processed.
and being
Yeah.
able to withstand incredible cold to having heart disease and all the same diseases that we suffer now. So blood type and evolution is super important. The thing is we're able to travel all over the world and eat whatever we want, all kinds of exotic foods. Go to Whole Foods or any co-op and you can get stuff from all over the world. I'm eating blueberries from Peru right now. Come on. How is that possible? It's snowing here in Seattle and I'm eating blueberries from Peru.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I
It's
need to go
cool.
grocery shopping. I'm
So
hungry.
that's
I'm like, I should have eaten before this. I had another call before this. I should have eaten.
uh
Like,
oh man, we didn't know it was going to be the food issue.
yeah, right. Now we're talking about food. I'm like, ooh. But yeah. Well, how's everything else going?
Well, things are going fairly well. We are hiring. We are at Where Next. We've got all kinds of job announcements coming and more to come. It's actually it takes time to put a job announcement together. You can't just put up 17 all at once unless you have
Yeah.
a giant team of people writing these things.
Your recruiters. Yeah.
So, and actually the descriptions have been written because they've been part of the work that we propose to do, but it still takes time to put them up and set up
Find the right
the
people.
file system, to
Yeah.
receive the resumes and the spreadsheets, to organize the candidates and interview people. So that's all happening. I'm just helping on this end with some of the organizational and some of the plumbing parts of this operation. But it's very exciting because again, we're looking forward. We're planning and looking forward. And that's super cool.
That
I'm
is
also
cool.
still climbing hard, and we're at the gym. And one of my other geezer pals, the over 60 climbing geezers, we're at the gym, and both of us were like, "Are we just getting better, or are these climbs getting easier, or are they underrated? Are they saying, you know, is this some are they just poorly rated?" Because we both seem to be climbing pretty hard, and that felt good as well.
No, that's
To,
nice.
as an athlete, and somebody who still trains fairly hard 3 days a week, it feels good to see results and feel strong that my strength is improving, that my focus is improving, and um, that I'm enjoying it. I guess that's the.
Oh, that's good. That's really good stuff. That's a great update.
How about you?
I don't know. I don't know. It's like I really try to bring positivity and I don't know, like optimism to these calls and these conversations. And I'm really struggling with it this week. So that's my reality though. At least right now. And I know you'll probably say that it's all arbitrary, but that is what I'm feeling right now. It's just
Well,
different.
I mean, the feelings are not arbitrary. The feelings, actually, this is something that uh, I think leads right off of what we were talking about last week. Last week. We were talking about that feelings aren't you, right?
Right.
That was and I think the thing that comes out of that's important is that doesn't mean feelings are useless.
Right.
It's actually the opposite. Feelings are, and we said feelings are information. Feelings are important information because they're a navigation, they're the navigational element to whether you're on the right track to where you want to go, what you want to feel, and how you want to be in the universe. So if you're feeling good, then chances are you want to keep doing whatever you did to feel good,
Right.
right? And if you're around new people and it feels good, then chances are that's probably some people that would be worth maybe seeing again. If you're doing work that feels good or inspires you, then chances are that's something you want to keep doing until it doesn't feel good anymore, until
Right.
something feels better or something feels more interesting or your curiosity is piqued by something else. And so when things feel shitty, it's also a navigational element. It's like, I don't need to be here in this situation right now. Let me put my energy somewhere else, anywhere else, even if it's just, I need to take a nap, right? I mean, that's that's the power of feelings. They're connected to our heart and they are the navigational element to our radar. And so when we're feeling crappy things or when we're feeling the crappy things of others, then it's like time to remove myself from this other situation, this person, or this circumstance and put myself and at least put myself in a neutral situation so that I can be my own influence. I can be my own best pal, my own best influence.
I think that's the key too, right? Is like the one thing, and control might not be the right word, but like that's the one thing that I have a say in, right? Is where like I have a say in how I'm responding to a situation or moving myself to another situation, whether that's a mind frame or a physical situation, or surrounding. Like that's the one thing I can control. I can move myself, I can transport myself, there's a lot I can do to change what's happening here. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget that. I guess that's the in a nutshell. It's easy to forget, like to get consumed sometimes by what's going on. That like it takes this moment of clarity to say, like, I need to put myself in a different situation now. So, and I think
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's where I've been.
Well, and also if the situation or the pattern keeps happening, that and putting you in this place where you need to either retreat or constantly having to recalibrate your inner, get being grounded or removing yourself from a situation. If you have to keep doing that, then it's like, well, what is the next? What is the feeling that I want more often, or a better feeling or a better situation where I don't have to keep doing this,
Right.
right? Because we can be really good at separating ourselves from bad situations. We can be really good at recalibrating or going into a meditative space and clearing ourselves. But there is a point where, how often do I want to keep doing this? How often do I want to keep putting myself in this routine or in this position when I could be in a completely different situation? I would never have to face this
Right.
framework or habituation or pattern again, or this interaction with this toxic person that I'm working with, or this client, or this friend of mine who keeps, one of the earlier episodes, it was like, how
Yeah.
often do you want to
Do
hang
you
out
put
with this
yourself in
person?
this? And it's
Right.
interesting. So like this is it kind of piggybacks on a conversation that I had with my sister not too long ago. She was seeing someone who, I think, it's one of those things where like she was seeing somebody who was, I don't know, from the outside, it's always easy to say, oh, you could do better or whatever. And you don't want to, like, she asked me, she's like, what do you think about this person? And I'm like, well, only because you're asking, here's what I see. But no one can make that decision but you. You are the one who is in the relationship, not me. Nobody on the outside is in the relationship. Nobody can benefit from whatever it is you benefit from in this relationship. And no one can be the determiner of that like scale, of that measure, right? No one else knows what you experience, only you. And only you can decide. Like you have to say like, and for me, anytime anybody asks like relationship advice, which does happen quite a while, I'm like you're the only one that can decide what's good for you. And if the good actually outweighs the challenge, and and the challenges, are they something that you can work through, want to put the energy into working through, are capable of working through? Or is it better to like put yourself in a completely different situation? But like each individual has to decide that for themselves and where they're at and what they want. And I do feel like it's a constant self-check, right? It's a constant checking in and saying like, maybe this was good a minute ago, maybe it's not great now. And so yeah, I mean, I think even like earlier, like the context that you referred to, early episodes, I was putting myself in a situation of starting my day with somebody who just couldn't say a good thing. Like, I was just talking about like literal words that are, family is a shit show or whatever. And it was just like, oh my gosh, like, it's just, it's just like having a serving of poop to start your day, like here's your breakfast, talking about gut health, right? But like I realized that like while there were benefits and this person is a wonderful person in many ways, this is not how I choose to start my day. And so moving in a different direction was the right thing for me. And and I still think that person's a fine person, no ill toward that person at all, no disrespect, but just we have to evaluate for ourselves where we're at and what's good for us and where we want to be. And like what you were saying, like is this what I want to feel? And if it's not, how do I put myself in the situation of feeling what I want to feel and getting more of that from moment to moment?
Yeah. So again, the feelings are not us. They are information that our radar is generating.
Yeah. And
Right?
that,
They're information. It's information, and it can be very, very strong and very, very clear, or we can learn to ignore that information and sublimate it, and then it comes out in strange ways, right? It comes out as illness. It comes out as outbursts. It comes out as, or it stays in there as stress.
Yeah.
Right? You're constantly hedging and having to think about someone or a situation unnecessarily in order to manage it, block it, keep somebody away. And that becomes essentially, ultimately becomes poison for us.
Right.
And so that's why feelings are so important. That's why honey badgers get angry when they're cornered, because it's like, honey badger's like, I don't want to be in this situation, and I will kill you to get out of this situation. Honey badger don't care.
Yeah. Oh,
Honey
man.
badger has feelings, and he knows how to use them. I will murder you if you try to keep me cornered here in this
So
situation.
yeah. That was like an old ad thing, right? An old ad campaign.
No, it was it was just a viral was it a viral YouTube video, or because I don't think
I just remember
Instagram had
references of it.
reels at that point. Yeah,
Yeah.
honey badger. Look at this honey badger here. Ooh, he's eating a poisonous snake. Ooh, the snake bit him. Ooh, he's passing out from the snake venom. Honey badger don't give a fuck. He don't care. That's
Yeah, so, and I
that's a
vaguely
great
remember them.
meme.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah,
funny.
honey badger don't care.
That's
But that's the thing, is fear and anger do have a purpose. The trouble is we misuse fear and anger, or we ignore fear and anger and we put them away, but they have a purpose, especially if you think of a caveman, you know, out hunting or sleeping at night. There's the real fear. There is a real necessary fear of an animal coming out and taking you, taking you out because you're on the wrong spot on the food chain. And nowadays, we have so many fears, and whether it's children worrying about shooters coming in schools, or whether it's we're worrying about a boss, but those are misused. That information is just staying inside of us. It's not changing. People constantly accept that they're going to have a certain level of fear or a certain level of stress, but that's information that we're supposed to be using to navigate.
yeah.
We're supposed to be using that information to change our situation. And when you were a caveman, the information wasn't so complicated. Tiger will eat you. Cold will kill you, right? Don't fall, because when your last buddy caveman fell off of this rock or cliff, they died, right?
Yeah.
It's like, so those things are pretty simple, but our world is more complex. And so we have all kinds of feelings that are attached to things unnecessarily, and we're not using the feelings to navigate. We're using the feelings, we're thinking, oh, the feelings are me, and I have to, maybe I have to fix me, or I don't like this and I don't know what to do about it. Well, what to do about it is put yourself in a different situation where the tiger isn't going to jump out of the woods, or where you're not constantly standing on the cliff, or dealing with, like, cavemen didn't really need to deal with the boss who had to have you know
Right.
have the report on their desk on Friday at 3.
The alpha caveman. You didn't bring the gatherings. Go hunt and gather. Bring the food here. Bring it by
Yeah,
sundown.
but the joy of, I'm sure the joy of roasting an antelope over a fire creates a pretty strong urge to go get that next antelope, or like, let's try a bigger animal next time.
Yeah, right.
Maybe this big animal will taste better.
That's interesting. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's just that's been my I don't know, but like at the same time, like I feel like feelings are interesting because feelings are not always isolated, right? Like there's often many feelings happening simultaneously, or like this is a good thing and this is a great feeling, and then this one's not so great, but like they're all interwoven sometimes, and yeah, I feel like that I've had a lot of those where there's just like it's like there's a lot, and then you have to have the awareness to choose. These are the ones I'm going with. These are out here, but I'm going with these.
Yes, and also people confuse feelings with thinking.
Well, and I mean,
And
talk more on the difference, the difference between
well,
thinking and feeling.
it's important. It's a really important difference, because we have sensing, which is, what are the sensations that my body is experiencing now? So if we really want to deconstruct our emotional state and the input that's happening, I can say, okay, what am I sensing? So that is everything from proprioception to just the sensory, like my hand say I'm in a stressful situation, or even I'm in a conference room giving a presentation. Maybe I have a cold sweat under my armpits. Maybe my hands are a little sweaty. Maybe I'm pacing back and forth. So that's what I'm sensing. Then there's what I'm thinking, which is like, oh, I'm going to be crap, or I'm going to kill this, or I'm nervous about what so and so from this organization is going to think. And I'm not sure if my joke is going to go over. So that's thinking. So there's thinking, what I'm sensing, and then underneath, what am I feeling? And it's pretty hard to feel multiple things at any given time, right? If you're really having a strong feeling, it might be confusion, terror. There's I forget who publishes a really good list of all the feeling words, but you can go through these maybe 100 words or so and go, oh, that's where I'm at. But a feeling, an emotional state, it's somewhere on the spectrum of negative or positive. And then you can attach a word to it based on maybe what you're thinking, but thinking and sensing are many times often confused with the actual feeling of the joy, the hate, the fear, the confusion, and so the trick is to get to what am I actually feeling, right? Am I feeling confusion? Am I feeling fear? Am I feeling anger? Am I feeling sadness? And then these feelings also are arranged in layers. So the high level feelings, and then as you get lower and lower, one feeling may cover up a deeper feeling and a deeper feeling. And then, as you get to the bottom of the feeling scale, there's hopelessness, right? There's hopelessness, emptiness. And so on top of that, there are these feelings are stacked. And so there's a scale, and they are stacked, and they cover, there's a hierarchy of feelings, and there are often we are covering all of the thinking, and all of the sensing that's going on is covering for something that's much deeper, which may be a sadness of a loss, or an anger, or a fear. Anger typically covers fear. We just discussed the honey badger, right? The honey badger shows anger, but underneath the honey badger is fearing that they're cornered, right? That their life is in danger, that their well-being is in danger. So they're showing their teeth, and they're showing anger, and anger typically covers fear. So that's the difference, and the sensing, what our body is experiencing mechanically. So sweaty armpits. I'm not crying. You're crying. Right? Like, I'm not crying. I just got something in my eye. Right. And also even just the state of relaxation, right? Are my muscles loose? Is my body tight? Is my stomach turning? Right. Those are all sensing. They're not feelings. Feelings are the emotional information that's generated by what we are sensing and what we are thinking. And people will say, I feel pretty stupid. No, in reality, when you say I feel stupid, that's not what you are feeling. That's what you are thinking. You think you're stupid, or you think other people might think you are stupid. What you're feeling is embarrassment, shame, fear that people will see through you. Right? So it's a very, in a lot of ways, it's very subtle. Again, it's like what we are thinking generates a feeling, and then that feeling is typically covering something up. It's covering up a deeper, more fundamental fear, a fear of loss, loss of control, uh, loss of approval, or loss of security. So you have honey badger in a corner, right? Loss of honey badger in a corner is going to lose they've lost their sense of security. Somebody, we get in an argument with someone we love, and then deep down underneath that, it might be the fear of losing them, or, you know.
Yeah.
And so
Sure.
those are the fear is the feeling. I might lose them is the thought. That's the information. And you might not even think that. You might just have a life experience, right? We have all lost people in our lives. We might have a life experience that just automatically generates that feeling when we are in a certain situation. And then we just pile a bunch of thoughts on top of it and say, well, I'm feeling a lot right now. But what's in reality, what we are doing is we are thinking a lot, trying to figure out what we're feeling or why we are feeling this. But that's not the feeling. And a lot of times, to get to the feeling, it helps to check in. What am I sensing?
Right.
Right. What am I sensing? And also, in this moment, am I willing to let go, to have a deeper look at what might be going on? Am I willing to let go of the need for control in this moment? Because if you let go of the control, you might see a little deeper into what you're feeling, into what we are feeling. Am I willing to let go of the need for approval in this moment, which might be, I need to be right. I need to somebody say, yeah, you're good, you're okay. Am I willing to let go of that? Because then you're going to be more vulnerable. Or am I willing to let go of the need for security in this moment? Right. And that, that would be, say, in the instance, for me, it would be being in a situation where I feel like they might be doing something innocent, but because of my experience as a child, it might somehow seem physically threatening. Just the way they position themselves, even though they aren't, that's not their intention. It's just, so those patterns, the frameworks, also will unconsciously generate a feeling state. The problem is we have a very sophisticated thinking state that sits on top of that. But if we get down to what we are really feeling, which might be fear, sadness, um, despair, then it's like, oh, I really do need to get out of this situation, or away from these people, or stop doing this work right now, or go live in Mongolia, whatever it
You
is.
know,
I mean, you.
in kind of like thinking through, listening and processing all at the same time here, like the thing that kind of keeps coming back to me is like sometimes the inclination, for me at least, is to like try to control the situation. And like this is a good reminder too, like sometimes it's not about trying to like even move yourself to a better situation, but actually let go and back off of the grip, right? Like I do feel like that's like I have a grip, like this I want this or whatever, but instead I just need to like let go and feel like make the space to feel, and make the space to really like try to process the feeling, and rather than like I do feel like I make this grip sort of action because I do feel like I grip to wanting, like I know what feeling great feels like. I want that. But it's not like whatever circumstances are not conducive to that feeling at all times 100%, right? And so things happen, and I like find myself sometimes just like gripping onto this idea of, but this was so good, so I'm going to try to reach for that feeling. Whereas another option might be to like let go, breathe, and consider options, or just feel like it's not that it's not okay to feel sad or despair, or like, I think those are okay things. They're real and they're natural to experience and to feel. But then to like be able to have the wherewithal to step away from it and almost look at it as if you're disconnected from it, right? Like to be able to kind of stand back and go, okay, like I acknowledge this, but I don't want to stay consumed by it. I don't want to be consumed by it. I don't want it to rule the day or the hour or even the moment. But sometimes it does.
Well, again, it's information. And how long do I want to hang in this state where I'm getting the same piece of information over and over?
Right.
Right. It is information, and it is not me. It is information, and it is purely there to help us navigate. So I'm feeling really sad. I'm feeling miserable. How long do I want to stay here in this state? Because we have a choice. And then what do I want to do that's better? And if I fail on any given day, there's always a good night of sleep and I wake up with a clean slate, because that first 5 minutes that we are just laying there kind of coming back into consciousness, we can put anything in there to align our day. Because usually, unless we're really under a lot of stress, usually a night of sleep will clear the slate. That's what sleep is designed for, to clear the slate. And we wake up in the morning choosing right away, either by habit or or consciously, what we're going to address and deal with. And that's what's going to give us opportunities to feel and have more information. And so we start over. You just start over the next day. You can write off the day.
I have a
But
question about
again,
this.
if we keep getting the same information over and over, and we don't change our circumstance, then we're not really giving ourselves the chance to move forward or move into a place that would be better for us, or that we would enjoy more, right? We have to keep understanding that if we're getting the same piece of information and we're not changing our lives, then we're going to keep getting stuck with that same situation.
So there's the notion, though, and I don't know that I'm necessarily, so maybe I'll only speak for myself, right? I mean, we've talked a lot about reframing, and that's something that takes practice. But sometimes, and I'm just going to challenge the notion a little bit of, like, sometimes reframing, it takes a conscious effort, right? It takes energy. And sometimes some of us just feel like, I don't have the energy to do this anymore. It's like I'm exhausted or I'm overwhelmed, and I'm just going to accept what is because I'm too tired to shift anything.
Yes. Well, again, that's also information, right? And if we're constantly having to reframe a situation we're in, then, because there's the reframing can be a mental construct, right? It's a mental practice, and we can certainly get tired of having to go through the same. But if we're having to reframe constantly, then what
Arguably a very
else?
exhausting thing. Yeah.
Right. It's very exhausting. And that is its own level of trying to control or manage a situation, when maybe the next question is how do I remove myself from this situation and put myself in a place where I don't constantly have to keep reframing? Because again, if we are constantly being pushed into a persistent emotional state, and that emotional state isn't beneficial for us, then we need to create a material circumstance that changes that where we're at, so that we're not constantly having to be faced with reframing and putting a shine on something which obviously is not inspiring us or not helping us live the life we want to live. And so yes, reframing, uh, we talked about reframing like for our kids in school, right? Like we talked about my daughter, having to tell my daughter that, yes, indeed, your teacher isn't that bright, but she's still the boss and you're going to have to deal with it. And it's
Yeah.
not going to be fun, right? That's just a fact of life. As we get older and have more agency over our lives, and we're able to be more brave, right? Because a little girl in fifth grade isn't necessarily going to be allowed to be brave, to fully express herself. Certainly not in public schools in Seattle, I can tell you that. So
Or Vegas.
there's less
Yeah.
room. So reframing is what my daughter needed to do in order to get through fifth grade with that particular teacher. But as adults who are now in more control of our lives and more aware, if we're constantly having to reframe because we're getting pushed into a certain emotional state, then we need to do something to change the circumstance so that we're not spending all that energy reframing and trying to put a shine on something that obviously isn't shiny, because that creative energy can be put to better use. That creative energy can be put to use creating things that will snowball into more positive emotions, more positive feelings, interactions with people who are in a more positive state. And so that is the again, that's where emotions are just information. And if we're constantly having to attend to those emotions and reframing our circumstance, yet our material circumstance doesn't change, then we need to do something different. Or, and if we're powerful enough, and aligned enough and expressing ourselves fully, the circumstance might change around us, right? Like people, like if we are the boss of a bunch of people and they're not performing and we're like, oh, we're having hope for them or constantly having to put energy into a situation, ultimately people might just leave. People might self-select out of that situation, right? And new people might come in. But we create structures in our lives where we have to interact with certain people, where it's just like my daughter going to fifth grade. You're not going to another fifth grade. You're not going to another school. This is it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is
right.
over. Yeah.
Yeah. Both mom and dad work. That there's no homeschooling happening, right? You're going to get a nice breakfast and you're going to get a good dinner, and you're going to have to face that teacher for whatever, 6 hours today. Yep. But we have more agency as adults, and we have more creative power. And if we really are intent on giving ourselves the life we want, we have to be brave. and take the feeling, take the information in, and say, if I keep getting the same information over and over, what do I need to do to make my material circumstance different? And that's, for me, that's how, right? That's how I end up divorced. I didn't even know. I
Yeah.
didn't even know my material circumstance needed to
Uh,
change
yeah.
until I was told my material circumstance was going to change.
So, and that's a reality sometimes, right? Like sometimes things beyond our control happen sometimes. And I think, I guess that kind of goes back to like the things that you do have. And I almost hate using the word control, but the things that I have the ability to influence, right?
Yes.
Um, in like maybe I am and maybe I am not aware of all the things I'm able to influence in my own self. And like I want to give myself space to really explore and understand, find understanding in what like yeah, what are the options and possibilities of what I influence. And I don't know, creative solutions, I guess, in a lot of ways, right? Like it's like um when you're up against something that is maybe not like anything to do with you, but it is a circumstance you're experiencing. um like you just the example you just gave, this was you were told your circumstance is changing. You still had to navigate that for you in what you
Mhm.
could influence and what you could own, if you will. That's what you had to do. Like, you have to navigate that.
Well, and I got out of that. I got out of that circumstance as quickly as I could.
Hmm.
The moment I knew that that's what the other person wanted,
Yeah.
I accepted it immediately, and I
Yeah.
got out of that circumstance as quickly as I could, and as cleanly and as kindly as I could to myself and the other person.
Yeah.
And that took a lot of focus and effort, and but in the end it led to a better situation, I'm pretty sure, for both of us.
Yeah. Well, that's, I kind of go back to like way back in 2009. Um, the economy of 2008 had sort of ripple affected the small company I was a partner in, a small animation shop, and we made the decision in 2009. And I look back at that year and I kind of go, wow, if I can survive that, I can survive anything. But it was like February, I had my second child. March, we closed this animation shop due to the economy and a lot of stuff happening. In April, I filed for divorce and started a new job at a massive company that basically was like almost like an acqui-hire. They wanted our whole team, and they were a client of ours and wanted our whole team, that we were shutting down. And anyway, so like that kind of thing. And then so like a lot of like just a lot, right? Like it was a lot of this going on, like ups and downs and ups and downs. And um in that year, trying to process like the first like 5 months of that year, it was just like, yeah, like second child, your new, like closing a company that I loved, starting a new job, filing for divorce, like, whew, it was an adventure. And um I don't know, like it's funny because I just like I reflect on that sometimes and I'm like, okay, if I could do that, I can do anything. I can navigate anything. That was a lot all at once. Not to mention years that
Yes.
have had loss, or, I mean, I've lost and career burnout and all of these things that I've also navigated. Like I feel like I'm strong and I'm positive and like I don't know, the circumstances of this present moment are, they feel so pale in comparison to past experiences, right? Like to those things that I've experienced and gone through, and kind of like I feel like come out shining in some way, or at least in my own way. Um
Wh-
yeah,
Well,
I don't
well,
even know
I
what
would
point I
say
was getting
just
at.
well. The thing is you and I know I have had similar turmoil,
Hmm.
especially when my daughter was born. I had a bit. My business got robbed, or when my daughter was conceived, my business got robbed, and then I experienced a period of homelessness. And then my daughter was born, and I had a job at a restaurant, and I finally had a little apartment. In that period, I had three friends die within 2 years during that period, right? And one of them was a climbing buddy who was 25. Another was a kind of a role model as a single dad, Carl. He was 39 or 40. And then another was one of my elder mentors, Jack, who was probably about 50. And so those three people died. And I got through that,
Yeah.
right? We made it. We are here. You and I are here together with many of our friends who have welcome to life, right? Welcome to
Yeah,
life. Check in. That's life
exactly, right.
101. Right? We've all made it, yet some part of us still doesn't necessarily trust that we can make it to the next novel through the next novel situation, right? There is always fear when things are complex or we're dealing with other humans. Yet we are here and we have made it this far, and we are clear thinking, we are physically well, and we know how to enjoy our lives. And I would say that we don't need to keep going through all the turmoil. We don't need to have this like, oh, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You can make it through a shitty situation. The what we learned, what we may have, I'm presuming, I'll say I can say what I learned is that I have a really high tolerance for shitty situations. I can
Yeah,
stay really calm.
yeah.
I can get through just all kinds of madness
But
in
then can and
business.
should, right?
Or do I want to, right?
Yeah.
We, I can tell you of business partners who are abusive drunks. I can tell and you and I have some shared stories
Yeah.
about self-loathing people that we have dealt with, and terrible clients. And I know I can tolerate those things, and I know I can have a good attitude even with those people coming through my life. But why?
Yeah. And
Why
that's,
do I want why do I want that? Why do I want to have to spend the energy putting myself in those situations with bad
that
clients or
is
with bad companies
exactly,
or bad business partners? I don't need that because I have a lot more creative energy that I'd like to spend not on reframing a bad situation, but on catalyzing a greater situation.
right.
And this is the joy of growing where next. We have gotten through some struggles with let's say lazy employees or bad employees. We have great employees, and we are evolving as executives, as founders, as partners in the company to make bigger dreams,
Yeah.
to set bigger goals for ourselves and our creative lives, set bigger financial goals, and start believing in them instead of believing, oh, okay, and we can keep this company rolling along. It's next level look like for my life? Where's there
Yeah.
more joy in business for us? and in the partners we work with. And so these are the conversations we're having, along with the conversations of like, well, these people or these frameworks or these ways of operating that got us here, they're not going to get us to the future. Same thing with your ability and my ability to tolerate great chaos, right? I mean, you're a mom. Like moms already are taking on double what any dad does. Even if I'm a single dad, there's just the child's bonding and the responsibilities that go with being a mom are incredible. And then you have two kids and a work situation. Those things are amazing that you worked your way through that. But are those skills necessarily the skills that you want to be exercising all the time? Because you
Right.
have a lot of you have because those are like defensive judo skills, right?
Right. Right. And
But and you're good at it, right? You're super good
sure.
at it, right?
But yeah,
Do
do I
you
need to
want to
be
be
anymore?
do you want to be Jamie? Jamie, do you want to be in the octagon? Right?
Yeah,
Right? Do you
no.
want to be in the octagon, or do you want to be in the meadow painting pictures, picking flowers? Maybe that's a frou-frou kind of metaphor, but
No, but I totally get
un-
it. Like I absolutely get it. It is and this even goes back to like what you were saying with when the good things that happened with Where Next put you at a different perspective. And so sometimes it's hard when you reach a different vantage point to adjust. Like, I mean, this even ties back to some of the food stuff that we were talking about earlier, right? Like I am 47 now. I am not 42. I'm not 45. I'm 47 and I got half a year of 47 left before I'm 48. And then, but like I'm at a different vantage point. It's time to look at things from where I am, not where I was, and where I am and where I would like to go. Right. And so like whether that's health, whether that's career, whether that's life, it's kind of like, okay, here's where I am. What do I have to work with? And what do I want?
yes.
Oh,
And at 61, for me, that's all I think about,
yeah. Well, and I ask the
right?
question a
It's
lot and process it
Yeah.
while
Yeah.
things, I feel like there's like oh, you got a telephone ring, like a classic telephone ring.
Yeah, like the classic ring. I have to uh that is Bogota ringing.
All right.
that is that is apparently they don't understand that we're unconstrained here.
We are unconstrained. Uh,
We're unconstrained, dude. You can't call during the middle of the unconstrained podcast.
like interestingly, I feel like this has been I mean, wherever we are in the conversation, no ties to that at this moment, but like I do feel like it's been a good like just regrounding like we always do, right? Like I feel like I walked in today with a lot of like almost like not the energy that I wanted to bring, right? I mean, that's where I was at. And that was the reality of the moment. But I do feel like,
Yeah.
I don't know, just kind of working through it out loud sometimes it reminds me like, yeah, I got this. Like, and not because I'm good at overcoming chaos or whatever, right? Like yes, we have a high tolerance for what you just said, right? Like, yeah, I have a
Yeah.
high tolerance for that, but also embracing what is good and what I want from given where I'm at, right? Like I feel like it's been a really good injection, if you will, of reminder that yeah, like
Well, it takes great bravery to accept what is and then decide that you want something different. right? Instead of instead of doing the thing that we've always done, which might be accepting what is and then just continuing to accept what is and
You know,
reframe, constantly trying to reframe it.
well, here is something that I feel like I learned back in 2012 after the loss of my dad. I went through that loss. I've talked a lot about this in public talks and whatnot, but like I was I kind of loved my job, lost my dad, and then disconnected from the work, realizing like I really wanted to be doing something that was more meaningful, um, put something good back into the world, and simultaneously thinking I could work through the loss of my dad the way I had worked through the loss of my brother, the loss of my mom in previous years. And it wasn't working, right? Like all of these things these tools that I thought I had for coping with this loss, they didn't apply to this loss. Like I was like, I can work through this. That's how I coped with the loss of my mom, I was very close with. I poured everything into my work because I was doing work I loved. And the more emotion I poured into that, the more I connected, and like the better I did in my work, the more that my work evolved and more opportunities popped out of that, right? But I tried to apply that to the loss of my dad, and instead like the opposite thing happened. It was like I was trying to pour my pain and my emotion into my work, and it was not working. It was just like my work was getting further away, and I was going, I always I describe it as like a helium balloon with a string. I was the string, and somebody had come along and just like snipped the string, and the work is the little helium balloon, and it sailed off. And I was the string that just dropped to the ground, just kind of like a limp little noodle. And like that was how I felt at the time. I was like, man, the more I try, the more I just feel like work is sailing off in a different direction without me. And I need to figure this out. And the point that I was getting to with all of that was I realized over time and through sort of iteratively analyzing where I was at and what I wanted, was that I could actually design what I wanted, right? I could take the pieces that I had, I could assess what was missing or what I wanted or what needed to be there that I didn't have. And I could look at what I wanted and kind of combine these three things into a design that ultimately gave me the freedom that I wanted to do what I wanted to do, to own my time. That was a big goal, still is. And I was able to mindfully design this using a process that I knew for product design, right? Like I was able to kind of apply it, but I had to be mindful about it. And there are things
Yes.
that,
It's discipline.
it is a discipline, and it does take mindfulness. I don't even want to say effort, because when it's the right direction, it doesn't feel as effortful as, sometimes when things start to feel like I was saying earlier, you just feel exhausted. You're trying so hard to work through the shit, or, like work through something that sometimes the answer is more in letting go and assessing and processing than clinging, right? And my instinct often is to cling, like to grip and to hold on to what I know or what I believe I want. And sometimes the answer is not there. And more often than not, the answer is in letting go, being the limp noodle. That's okay. It's actually okay sometimes to like be the string and let whatever it is that you were attached to sail off like the helium balloon did for me, right? And to just lay there for a minute as the string that got cut off the helium balloon, and actually say, all right, like, you know what? I can design what happens from here.
Well, and also in the accepting that this work wasn't working, maybe
Yeah.
you actually, a lot of times, all of the activity and all of the work and all of the machinations we go through are to avoid the actual feeling of loss, to avoid the
Yeah.
information that's coming through in the feeling. And then once once we recognize that feeling of loss or despair, then we can say, okay, that's there. I acknowledge it, and then can move forward. But a lot of the stuff people are doing is to keep from feeling this deep primal
That's
fear.
so, we keep so busy that we don't have time to feel.
I climb with some people. It's easy to see when in rock climbing how emotions manifest physically, because when you're lead climbing, you actually are doing something that's dangerous and can be life threatening. In the gym, even there's lead climbing, and so you're up above your protection, you're clipping your rope in. And for those people who don't know rock climbing, I apologize for this being an obscure reference, but ultimately what I can see is how people carry their stress, their workday stress, into the gym, and even that they're shaking, that they're a little bit nervous, and that carries into the climbing when it doesn't need to.
Yeah.
They're not nervous from the climbing because they're actually good climbers, but because they are just so focused on the climbing, the nervousness comes out from whatever their work day or whatever stress is happening in their lives. I can see it. I can see the fear or the lack of confidence, and all of those things become apparent when people are doing something at a very high level.
It's interesting because I remember, I go through little chapters of different types of physical activity usually, and like mountain biking or yoga. And I can identify those even in my own practice, whether it was yoga or riding or whatever, where you have an off day at work and it comes to your practice, and you either work it out through your practice, or sometimes it overrides your practice sometimes. So yeah, like I feel like I really relate to that, even though I'm not a climber. I don't climb, and those aren't that obscure reference wise. If
Well,
you've had any experience with that, with the physical
climbing is
manifestation.
climbing is neat in that way. Maybe yoga too, because they're not ballistic, right? So it's not like somebody sprinting by you, or you're not on a bicycle or on a basketball court running around at high speed. And every movement can be very deliberate. So in those moments between deliberate movements and attending to a rope, maybe if you're lead climbing, you can see the body, you can see how the body moves, and you can see confidence literally being how it is written in someone's movements.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of neat about rock climbing, especially, is that it lays bare a lot of things in a physical manner that are easy to spot because someone isn't moving at a really high speed.
Yeah, yoga is definitely very similar. For me,
Yeah.
even the mountain biking though, it's how I navigate, a rocky downhill. On one day I'll ride it beautifully and smooth, and then another day I have, oh man, this is rough or whatever, that hesitation. And that's all it takes. It takes this moment of hesitation and you biff it. You're like,
Yeah, and then
you're
you've
picking
got
rocks out
a
of your
plate.
elbow.
You've got a plate in your forearm the next
Yeah,
the next
exactly.
day.
So I mean, like as far as observing someone else though, even, it's like sometimes how they navigate those same obstacles. It is interesting. That one moment of hesitation can change the outcome of everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, Stephan, did we do it?
I,
I feel like we did it just now.
I think we did it, Jamie. I
Yeah.
think we completed another mission here.
Yeah, I do feel like it was
Pretty darn good.
in full circle.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about a lot more stuff than I imagined we would, but
Yeah, it was good. It was good. And I thank you again. For me, it is always good to have a recenter sort of experience.
yeah, and for me too, it is always a good reminder of all the things that are important for us to keep doing and keep focusing on
Yeah,
which the things upon which we should train our focus and the things we should strive for.
exactly. Design, mindfully design. uh,
Yeah.
all right, good sir. With that,
Uh,
I should say,
all right, Jamie.
have a great
Until
week.
next week,
Happy holidays.
I wish you a Merry Christmas,
You too. You
and
too.
we will see each other next Thursday.
Yep, before the new year. All
Yep.
right. Take care, Stefan.
Cheers, Jamie.
Bye.